few months since Horizon Forbidden West came out. This video is dropping so long after release because I'm lazy. I wanted to make sure I was making the right video. I didn't want to just do a generic critique or review. There's hundreds of those. They're great, but I simply want to do something else with my own content. Oh look, there's Matty. We had him on the podcast recently. Link in the description. This required me to play the game, take notes, write up those notes more formally so they don't consist of the stupid kangaroo robot can suck my nut, then write a 30-page script, hate it, start again, write the one I'm currently writing in hopes I can create the thing that finally sates my desire to create rather than leaving me empty once again after hitting the upload button, giving me the desire to delete my whole channel. Horizon Forbidden West utterly consumed my life for the 2 weeks that it took to finish the main story. I haven't played a game that religiously since Red Dead Redemption 2. In those 2 weeks, I put in 60 hours, completed most major side quests, and finished the main story. I don't usually play so much of a game so quickly, but Forbidden West just engaged me from the offset. Forbidden West was a game that meant a lot to me. Zero Dawn is one of my favourites of the last generation, and so I wanted to actually give this game my full attention. Look at cute little twink lasers. Not to rush through it to get a review out, not that I've ever done that before, but I was looking forward to simply losing myself in a game that I was really looking forward to. I didn't go from main mission to main mission, I simply took my time, stopped at everything that caught my eye, explored caves and underwater depths, spoke to the locals of settlements, and engaged in challenges around the world. Similar to Horizon Zero Dawn, Forbidden West decided to release mere days before a titan of the video game industry released a highly anticipated open world title that it would inevitably be compared to. Now, I'm not afraid to say this, I prefer Zero Dawn to Breath of the Wild, and I prefer Forbidden West to Elden Ring. Okay, I'm a little nervous after I said that out loud. I could spend this video trying to compare it to Elden Ring to explain why I prefer this game, but also why both do fantastic things in their own right. But I don't want to make that argument. I prefer this game purely because of my own taste in video games. It's not an argument I have any intention of trying to formulate. What I do want to talk about though is how I feel that Forbidden West's success as a sequel and entry into the open world genre has been greatly overlooked. This game to me was an absolutely monumental success in achieving every aspect they set out to achieve. This video will act as my full critique of Horizon Forbidden West, coming from somebody who is deeply invested in this universe and lore, to talk about my experience with this game, for your entertainment and to give my own insight into what makes this game such a bloody beacon of why I love video games so much. Feel free to use the timestamps in the description to navigate to each of the topics in the video at your own peril, or watch the whole thing. I'd advise doing that. Also watch the ads too. I'm joking, I'm not allowed to tell you that. I think that's illegal actually. If there's a particular thing you want to hear my thoughts on most, skip right along to it. But I'll know. There will be major story spoilers within the narrative part of this video and the character section, so if you wish to avoid that aspect, feel free to skip over it using the timestamps, but better yet, just don't watch this video until you've played it. It's such a good game. Go bloody get it. Spend your hard-earned cash, do yourself a favour. Oh yeah, and thank you to Sony for sending me a code and sponsoring this video. This video wasn't sponsored, but they did send me a code. I appreciate that. And without further ado, let's dive into Horizon Forbidden West. Forbidden West is a sequel to the 2017 game Horizon Zero Dawn, and as a sequel, it has to be a sequel. Horizon Zero Dawn remains one of my favourite games of the last generation. I fell in love with the lore, the world, the gameplay, Aloy, all of it, and so a sequel was always something I was looking forward to. But with something as special as Horizon Zero Dawn was to me, a sequel is also scary. What if they get it wrong? What if they take it in a direction that I don't like? What if it feels void of purpose? All possibilities that I was concerned for. Horizon Forbidden West, however, doesn't at all try to do Horizon Zero Dawn again. It doesn't try to recreate the mystery, the secrets, it just takes where we left off and it builds towards something new in the most satisfying of ways, in my opinion. And of course, we'll get into every aspect of how as we go. Everything learned in Zero Dawn, everything gained translates to the start of Forbidden West. We're filled in briefly on where Aloy is, how long it's been, and where we're at. And that starts our game. Everything else that is only vaguely described is in more detail explained as the game pans out. Except for why Val shaved his fucking beard. As a beard advocate myself, that looks good on you. It upsets me that you got rid of it. The vibes I get from Forbidden West are very similar to two older games, and their sequels we don't really see often today. Those being Assassin's Creed Brotherhood and Mass Effect 2. They're sequels that build on everything that came before them in such a wonderful way by using old characters alongside new characters, using new environments while also revisiting old ones too. These games feel new yet deeply connected to their predecessors, and that's the sort of sequel we get from Horizon Forbidden West. It's very much a sequel to Zero Dawn. They don't try to reinvent reinvent the wheel for the sake of it. They improve where needed, add where they can, but all the while build upon what already existed in a way that creates a fresh experience within the same infrastructure. It's new ground laced with familiarity that creates a feeling I haven't felt since the days of Brotherhood and Mass Effect 2. In fact, I haven't felt a single emotion since 2010, and no amount of explaining why the Shroud was kept under the Villa Auditore to my therapist seems to help. The new territory we're treading into in this game is the Forbidden West itself, somewhere merely alluded to in data you could find around the world of Zero Dawn. The Forbidden West was named as such by the Carja because very few of their soldiers ever returned from this area just west of the Daunt. The Daunt being this bit here. With that information already available to us 5 years ago, it was certainly interesting to then see the sequel would be set within this region. Knowing vaguely some information about the history of the land made it even more intriguing to fully get to explore it as Aloy when the game finally released. But the question is, how exactly is this area of Horizon handled? Is there much to do? How is it different from Zero Dawn? Well, let's take a look. The structure of the open world is very similar to Zero Dawn in the sense that it's pretty well curated in terms of how you organically explore. Nothing feels like it's there by accident, and it's even more apparent in this game than it was in Zero Dawn. To give a base overview, the world is broken up into territories that are closed off to each other by choke points. You begin in a smaller area known as the Daunt, a place ruled by the Sundom and still directly a part of the world of Zero Dawn. Not literally part of Zero Dawn, it wasn't actually in the game, but it's Sundom, which makes it very familiar. However, once you pass across the gates at Barren Light, you enter No Man's Land, in lore a location between Carja and Tallnecks territories, which is home to the Utaru. And further on from that, accessible via a story mission, is the farthest west area, reaching all the way out to the coast of San Francisco, the true Forbidden West and home of the Tallnecks clans. In doing this, the devs have a much greater control over how you approach the world, when and how you see particular landmarks, and the way in which it's revealed to you. Now don't get me wrong, this game is very much an open world game, but it's not as open world as a traditional open world. I've said open world so many times it doesn't even sound like a real phrase anymore. I'd say Forbidden West sits comfortably between God of War's style of world and The Witcher 3 style of open world. The game is structured in a way that funnels you to particular areas, but without taking away the autonomous exploration that open world games are known for. I like things feeling more curated and purposeful, without losing the sense of vast exploration that these games can convey. I mentioned briefly that there was a lore to each region within the Forbidden West, and the lore that we have is rich, richer than I honestly had anticipated. Learning more about each tribe and civilization was so engaging, whether learning about why the Utaru carry seed pouches, how Hekarro unified the Tallnecks, or the empire of the Quen far across the sea. There was so much to discover and learn. I was worried they'd blown their load on Zero Dawn and there wasn't much more depth you could add to new tribes and factions after having such rich backstories in the Carja, Ossurum, Nora, and Banuk, but boy was I wrong about that. Learning about the new tribes and factions in Forbidden West holds up to that of Zero Dawn, and it just makes this whole universe feel even more alive, and it's something I vastly appreciate. I think in terms of world building, something people don't really appreciate about these games is the delicate crafting of history. When building a new tribe, take the Tallnecks for example, they not only have to come up with the general aesthetic of the tribe, they have to design their beliefs, their way of life, their hierarchy, their history with one another, their history with other tribes, their wars, their gods, and on top of that, they have to create a way to tether this to the old world. The Tallnecks worship the Ten. They see them as gods pretty much. But upon some digging and uncovering, we discover the Ten were simply famous old world pilots that fought in Operation Enduring Victory, the final stand against the machines, to give Project Zero Dawn a chance to be completed. This is double the amount of world building. By crafting all this, you don't only create a meaningful world to explore, you create a meaningful world that once was. There's twice the amount to create, but it also gives us twice the depth, and it's really something unique to Horizon. This applies to every tribe, every town, everything you find in the world for the most part has a meaning in the here and now, but also a meaning to uncover. What was it truly for? Why did the old ones build it? And how does that characterize their world? It's this meticulous crafting of lore and history that gives so much depth to the world of Horizon, and I do really think it's overlooked. In terms of navigating this open space, there's a lot to love in general exploration. The biomes are incredibly varied and transition from one to another in such a detailed way, from deserts to canyons, from jungles to beaches and so on. Each has its own vibe and tone that's conveyed by the atmosphere, weather, and the music, allowing full immersion in the world. Of course, there are many ways to navigate too, as well as the charger mount returning from Zero Dawn. You have a few other mounts added as well, like the more beefy bristleback or the more slender claw striders, as well as the worst kept secret, flying mounts now being being a part of the game. It gives you totally different ways to interact with navigation and explore the vast world of the Forbidden West. I will say though, mounts are still a bit finicky. I did find myself getting stuck on objects very often and sometimes just stopping in the middle of the path. It's a tad janky and that sort of carries over from Zero Dawn. Making a mount system that's flawless is a difficult thing, however. The Witcher and even Red Dead Redemption suffers from issues in that department.
You're a big boy. Oh, fuck.
I think a horse riding mechanic by default is always going to come with a level of jank, but there wasn't nearly enough jank to ruin my experience. Just thought it was worth mentioning. Of course, you have the new addition of the Shield Wing as well, a mechanic which is ripped straight out of Breath of the Wild, or if we're being realistic, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. It adds a new way to play and see the world. Gliding down from high points has never been so satisfying, and the composition of how the world is built to be viewed from height or at a distance is really exemplified when using the Shield Wing. It's stunning. Oh, and to top it all off, I have to mention the climbing system. Yes, there is definitely jank. Sometimes you'll misjudge a jump. Will it auto lock me onto the platform, or do I have to press the jump? No, I've fallen down anyway. But when it does work, when you get all the right moves, it feels incredibly fluid. Whether it's climbing a preset path of yellow objects to a destination or just scaling a rock face, the entire climbing system feels so much more free than it did in Zero Dawn, and it's a much needed change. I do feel that with all this potential, you could probably take it even further in a third entry, allowing for more climbing in more areas with maybe a bit more indication of where you can climb, because if you aren't using the focus button, it's not entirely clear which cliffs can be climbed and which can't. It's a small thing, but still somewhat irritating despite how engaging the climbing mechanic has become. With the addition as well of the pullcaster, it means traversal is more unique and inventive than it ever has been, and it's something I really do admire. Now, I think we need to address the elephant in the room here, which is map markers. Giving the player any sort of indication on where to go has become quite the topic for discussion on social media after the release of Elden Ring, same as it was in 2017 for Breath of the Wild. A lot of people seem to feel that a map should be completely empty, zero hand-holding, you go and figure it out. And while yes, this system is fun, I do like Elden Ring a lot, I don't know if it lends itself to every game ever made, ever. The reason Elden Ring is so fun is because it's different and it handles that very well. I don't want every game to be Elden Ring, and not every game needs to be Elden Ring. Some games benefit from markers, and I do think Horizon is one of those. Horizon is a game that focuses heavily on character, story, and role-playing. It's more about the experience you have at those locations, more so than actually finding the locations. Something like Elden Ring is very much about the exploration first and foremost. The way the game is built encourages no hand-holding. The joy and the satisfaction comes specifically from discovery of the unknown. But in Horizon, if you were to simply remove map markers for towns or bandit camps or quests, I don't think that would actually improve the game. I think it would only serve to make it more convoluted in its design. I don't want everything to be marked from the offset, but when I get close enough, yeah, throw me a marker. It was never finding Viridian on a blank map that made it satisfying in Zero Dawn. You were taken right to it with markers. The joy from that discovery came from everything else. The sight of it, the characters there, Aloy's reaction, wandering the streets. Markers work in Horizon because they help you to orient yourself in the world, and from that, decide what you want to do and where you want to go. The only major criticism I do have is the question marks on the map. As you get close to a point of interest, it'll throw up a question mark, which does mean usually if there's not a question mark, there's nothing there, meaning all the empty space between question marks is just empty space. See, this is a confusing one for me. The design on the surface is actually no different from Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, there are still points of interest with empty space between those. The only difference is in Elden Ring, you don't know where the empty space is, which creates a sense of deep exploration. In Horizon, I think what really helps it is the fact that question marks don't appear until you're within a certain range, meaning as you wander the map, there actually isn't anything indicating where you should go until you reach a certain distance, in which case the game is just nudging you towards it. You still found that, the game is just letting you know that it's there. There's also the fact that between the question marks there actually are things to find, usually small data pads or pieces of visual world building. There's not a reason to ever not explore because you will find things. For example, a story about soldiers taking shelter during Operation Enduring Victory, or a diary entry from a young girl who was out hiking with her dad, neither of them really wanting to be there, but her dad trying desperately to cling on to their family after the mother had passed away. These moments aren't marked on the map, but they left a mark on me. It makes exploring outside the confines of markers still worth your time. And one of the best moments for me was something that wasn't even marked on the map. I was off completing a job. I was trying to collect some fish so that I could craft a particular bow or outfit or something. I don't really remember because that's not the memorable part. But as I came back out of the water to the surface, I stumbled across this island. It seems I'd swam out further than I thought I had. And when I started to walk towards it, Aloy made a comment.
What is this place?
As I got further up this hillside, she said, more and more.
Someone painted those markings with great care.
And when I got to the top and I found this memorial and interacted with it, the most wonderful thing happened.
Here we remember our friend, with a view as calming as his voice, on stone as strong as his spirit. He was not just our rock. He was our oak, sturdy and stoic, whose presence brought us comfort, and whose branches touched us all. Rest in peace. It sounds like he's truly missed.
This place acts as a memorial to one of the producers at Guerrilla that died in 2019, Patrick Munnick. And this wasn't marked on the map. It was something you could easily miss, and it's something that I just happened to stumble upon. And maybe that's something that in the future they should do more of. Places like this, whether it's a reference to someone on the team they lost or just something in world, it might be worth making more things not marked. I do understand if people would prefer it never told you where things were, and maybe that should be an option to turn off markers entirely, but I simply feel what happens at a location is infinitely better than actually finding the location itself. And in a game where story and character is paramount, that makes sense. In a game like Elden Ring, where the entire focus is pretty much gameplay oriented, marking things on your map would really simplify the entire game and break the design philosophy. The existence of Elden Ring doesn't make Horizon bad, they both just try to do different things. And that's okay. Seriously, that's okay. Please don't set the Souls fans loose on me. Oh. Oh fuck, they found me. Ah!
This is so dumb.
So you're going to be coming across things to do in the world, activities, quests, and all the stuff you'd expect from a world like this. Now I could list every individual thing you do, but I did that in the original script and I hated it. So let's highlight the ways the game nails its side content, and some ways it doesn't so much, so we're covering all our bases here without getting lost in bullet pointing and listing every single bloody thing. The best and most important type of side content are the side quests and errands. Quests you pick up from towns or settlements, and very rarely sometimes on the side of the road or out in the wilds. I do feel there's room for improvement in that department, meaning how you come across them. They sort of all pop up, grouped together in settlements, which makes sense to an extent because that's where all of the people are. But the way The Witcher 3 manages to make side quests feel entirely organic and random encounters is something Horizon could probably learn from. Having side quests and errands be more often bumped into than collected from a town, it's not a huge problem, just something worth mentioning. The actual quality of these quests though is simply night and day when compared to Zero Dawn. It might have been a knee-jerk, but I did say early on that I felt the quests themselves rivaled even The Witcher 3, potentially even being better in some cases with how they're structured and the payoffs that you find. And if you've just scrolled to the comments to leave a comment about how The Witcher 3 is actually overrated and it's not that hard to beat The Witcher 3 side content, fuck off. For example, in the first town you encounter in the game, Chainscrape, there's a bloke running things. He's sort of no good, only out for himself, a money-making type. And we all know how game publishers obviously hate capitalism. He's put people in danger and he's controlling a lot of the commerce in Chainscrape. Now there are several side quests around the Dawns, all of which give you different aspects to explore in terms of Ulven's running of the town. You learn about the Bristlebacks in the valley, you learn about when he came to power, you learn about a mining expedition gone wrong, among many other stories that seem disconnected yet all come together in the end. All of the quests tell one singular story arc about Chainscrape as a place and a people, and Ulven's control over it, eventually ending in you kicking him out of town and winning back the town for the people. It feels incredibly rewarding to experience as you learn so much information about the tons of real people living there, even meeting up with old faces like Petra if you remember her from Zero Dawn, which you probably don't, and you learn plenty about Ulvund himself. There's a few of these across the game, side quests that all work in tandem as a continuous arc to explore and experience, and it's so incredibly well executed. Each side quest feels like it has depth, whether it's learning more about the world, particular characters, political disputes or rivalries. You always get something meaningful from completing these side stories. I do believe these side stories are some of the most thoughtful in any open world game I've played of this nature. Like I said, living up to the quality of The Witcher 3 and potentially surpassing it in some areas. There is a difference, however, between side quests and errands. While errands can still be enjoyable and offer little one-off stories, they're Obviously a lot lesser, and some can feel a bit samey, with the stories being told usually consisting of, I lost a friend, can you find them? You go looking, follow a trail, fight a machine, and then either find a friend or they're dead. Don't get me wrong, that's not all the errands, there are some really cool ones, but they do lack variety in some areas. It's more of a nitpick to me because the quality of the side content is by and large so high, but it's worth bringing up nonetheless. What they do have in common is the superb facial animation, which is an insane step up from Horizon Zero Dawn. I mean, look at this. This is how they do it for every single piece of dialogue. I feel like they mocapped it all, because how else do you get this level of detail otherwise? If they did, then it's impressive that they seemingly did it for every single conversation, and if they didn't, it's also impressive because they had to animate this level of detail by hand. Either way, I'm blown away. These side quests also work as a way to really characterize Aloy, something we'll touch upon a little bit later in the character segment, so just wait patiently for that. Or use the timestamps to skip over to it if you want to hear it now, but you'll miss out on our really in-depth chat about bandit camps. So either way, you're better off than I am because I actually have to write this bit. Okay, so on the other end of the spectrum, we have bandit camps and outposts. And by the other end of the spectrum, I mean so far on the other end that it probably fell off the spectrum and ended up on another spectrum. Well, they aren't bandit camps, they're rebel camps, but it's the same thing. They are the most Ubisoft this game gets, which, if you didn't know, is a synonym for bad. I'm really not a fan of these types of objectives. Random camps all over the world where you go into, take out a boss, then leave, maybe there's some loot. It's not a fun gameplay loop, I'll be honest. Thankfully, they're minimal, but I'd still say there's too many. Not because there's a lot, but because once you've done it once, you've done it. It's not fun anymore to repeat. And for a game that's so varied in its content, it's crazy that these are so mundane. That really is just the outpost though. The actual rebel camps do have variety. There aren't many, and each have their own unique layout, environment, and story aspect, with a voice recording from Regala, the leader of the rebels, to give a bit of story context. I won't spoil things, but a story does unfold and link to the main story as you progress through these camps. It's nice that there's added depth, which does help it stray away from Ubisoft territory, but at the end of the day, you're just clearing camps. Even if the camps have more substance than the outposts, it's a very similar approach gameplay-wise. I could personally do without them. There aren't so many that they ruin the game with clutter, but just as a mission type, they're pretty mundane. Alright, so there's a lot of other side content, and someone making a full-on review might go through each piece and tell you what's good and what's bad, but I don't have enough to say without it feeling like unnecessary padding of the video. Believe me, I tried writing it all out, and it was just waffle. So instead, let me list all the ones that I liked, and then we'll move on to collectibles. Tallnecks, Cauldrons, and Relics are utter standouts. The Tallnecks and Cauldrons take what worked in Zero Dawn and push it further. One of the things about Zero Dawn was that although Tallnecks and Cauldrons were brilliant and left you wanting more, you couldn't just do the same thing in a sequel. You needed to reinvent, and that's exactly what they do. Tallnecks are always different, from repairing a broken component to taking one down with ballistas to even crossing over with a Cauldron mission. These things are endless fun, and it's a fantastic way of taking a tower mechanic and making it integrated into a world in a way that means something and is actually fun to play. Cauldrons again follow this same design philosophy, where every single one is unique, from being broken and in ruin to underwater and so many other types. They end up being incredibly refreshing to play through as they reinvent what a Cauldron mission type actually is, and that keeps it engaging. Most of the Cauldrons do end in boss fights similar to Zero Dawn, with some proving a real challenge. Honestly, this fucking Lapras looking machine thing is one of my favorite new machines to fight. This thing is so much fun for some reason. I can't even put my finger on why. I just think the placement of the explosive components makes it so damn satisfying when you pop one off. Overall though, Cauldrons retain their intrigue. They're refreshing and new and simply gorgeous on the PS5 as well. Now, Relics are incredibly fun side activities to engage with, maybe my favorite of the new additions. You can spend sometimes 30 minutes on these without even realizing the time has passed you by because they engage you so heavily. They're essentially ruins of old world buildings, office blocks, hotels, things like that. By entering them, you start a puzzle which can involve knocking down walls, using crates, pulling down parts of the environment with the pullcaster and climbing around the environment to solve a puzzle to open a door, using data pads which contain codes and valuable information to allow Aloy to reach the final room which holds a relic. They're not the most crazy difficult puzzles, but they do make you think and they do engage your brain, which is nice. And I do like that it's not all just environmental puzzle solving, using the data pads to figure out the code. Sometimes it's a code that's given straight to you. Sometimes it'll be like, the code is the year that the building was built, and you have to go and find out when it was built. That's a lot easier than it sounds. They're full of little pieces of lore and information as well. The datapads don't just give you codes and information to solve the puzzle, they're also grounded in the history of the building, which allows you to learn more about where you are as you move around. They become more and more complex the further west you head, and there was just enough of them that they left me wanting more by the time I was finished with them. What you do with these relics though is something discovered by playing the story, and not a moment I really want to spoil either. You've also got salvage contracts, the arena, hunting challenges, and races, all of which are much more minor activities but offer challenges that are fun to compete and engage with, but there's not much more to it than that, which is fine. It's clearly not the meat of the game, just supplementary stuff. What is an open world game without collectibles? Some would argue, good. I seriously think I've made that joke before, but good luck scouring my videos to find out which one it's from though. Making collectibles feel meaningful in an open world game is somehow the hardest accomplishment because most feel like nothing but another mindless addition to a list with no actual weight, sort of like every time I get a mind-numbingly stupid YouTube comment after 10 years of doing this shit. Oh look, there's another one. There are a few different types of collectibles in this game, and honestly, I do feel most are given value. Signal lenses introduce you to the concept of collectibles, and there's like 6 of them in the Daunt, all at the top of towers. So you climb a tower 6 times, and then collect them and give them to a lady who really wants them, so much so she let 2 people die. The others, however, have story reasons or pay off usually. Obviously, there's the datapads and voice memos and such that I've already briefly touched upon, giving you insight into tribes, or the old world, or hey, it's Gildan from the Frozen Wilds, what a guy. Black boxes can be found around the world and offer some really great insight into Operation Enduring Victory from pilots that served during the time. There's some really nice moments captured, and Aloy gives insight into these with a small piece of dialogue every single time you collect one. It's just a nice piece of world building. Survey drones are really cool. I don't really want to spoil what they do if you're yet to do them, because although it's only small, when I first found a drone, stole the data, and brought it back to where it belonged, what happened was such a cool little moment that I think it's worth experiencing firsthand. Vista points returning this game, allowing you to gaze into the world that once was. Finding these signal poles, you can use them to get an image of the landscape. To properly orient yourself, looking around, you have to figure out where the image was taken from and line it all up. When you do so, you're treated to a view of the old world along with a nice piece of data and dialogue from Aloy. Makes it all feel worth it for sure. These are really cool. And finally, we got the war totems. They're cool little Easter egg items that aren't marked on the map, and they're references to a certain little game with a pretty cool reward for collecting them all. It's God of War. That's the game they're referencing. The collectibles in this game aren't overdone like they can be in some games. There's just enough, and they pretty much all give you an incentive to collect them. They're used as an opportunity to not only work as an objective for 100% completion, but they're used to further characterize the world Aloy inhabits, and that makes them incredibly meaningful to the player. Unless you're not invested in the world and lore, but in that case, why are you even here? Assassin's Creed Odyssey seems more your speed. And how could I talk about the side content in this game without delving into Machine Strike? A brand new addition to this game, Machine Strike is Horizon's answer to Gwent. Gwent was of course The Witcher 3's answer to playing card games with your extended family in a caravan when you're 8. Machine Strike is a board game that allows you to collect and use machine pieces, all with their own abilities and stats, to face off against plenty of NPCs all across the world. I won't lie, this game consumed a lot of my life, and given I'm a big fan of Gwent, I'm not really surprised. This is easily a game I could see come to its own mobile app or physical board game because it's simply so damn fun, strategizing and claiming victory against your opponent to become the absolute king of games, watching them grovel at your feet as they lose everything and you take their wife and their life savings. I'm not a fucking monster. In my original script, which I should stop talking about because you'll see me for the failure that I am, I wrote up segments on stealth, overrides, and the individual ways you can interact with the combat. Instead of doing that incredibly drawn out way of diving into this aspect of the game, I'm going to discuss combat as the primary focus, with stealth, overrides, and upgrades being supplementary to the combat itself, because that's exactly what those elements actually are in this game. Now, the main article of combat is the ranged combat, specifically your bow and other ranged weapons like the spike thrower, which is the best way to break the entire combat system. It is of course very similar to Zero Dawn, but I feel that's to the game's benefit. When I hopped into Forbidden West, it again didn't feel like they were trying to reinvent the wheel unnecessarily. It felt updated, it felt refined, but it felt like the Horizon that I loved 5 years ago all the same, with necessary tweaks. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Sequels should still feel like an entry into the same franchise. You shouldn't feel like you're playing a totally different game. Now, I'm not one of those people who thought Horizon's combat sucked. A lot of people back in 2017 heavily criticized Horizon's combat for being boring and a lot of the same thing over and over again, which I'm gonna be honest with you, I never really understood. If you want to know my thoughts on that specific criticism, then you can go and check out my Horizon Zero Dawn retrospective from 2020, linked in the description. Please go and watch it, it's almost at 1 million views. But as someone who really felt Zero Dawn had a fun and engaging combat system with heaps of depth, how did I find the combat system in Forbidden West? Yeah, I liked it, I thought it was good. Let's not beat around the bush. It's fun, plain and simple. It uses the fundamentals of what made Zero Dawn's combat so engaging and rewarding, but it takes it to new places with new machines, new weapons, and it gives you new ways to engage. When you enter any fight, unless you're super over-leveled or they're one of the grunt type machines, you're going to have a challenge. I feel even on normal, which is the difficulty I played on, the combat was a decent challenge. Every encounter feels somewhat of its own little boss fight, and when you're fighting multiple machines together, your spatial awareness and ability to crowd control is paramount to survival.
Okay, what is happening? Oh my god.
You use your focus to tag specific parts of the machines, usually before you enter a fight. This is a typical scenario. You start in stealth, you can use your spear to pick off enemies, be it humans or machines, before you jump into the fight. Of course, there's also the option to override machines too, so you have the upper hand. Stealth isn't a method of play, more so a tactical means to enter combat. I will say though, I did feel scanning machines was incredibly inaccessible during the combat itself. In Zero Dawn, you'd click the focus, scan the weak points, and get right back to fighting. In Forbidden West, you'll find you have to hold the focus button, wait for it to load, scan, and then wait for the machine info to pop up. It slows down combat significantly and means you're often fighting blind because the focus info dips after a while once it's scanned. So you end up having to stop combat, load up the focus data, and hope you aren't killed while trying. I get what they were going for here, but I feel a simple fix would either be to have the focus info appear much quicker, or to have it stay for the duration of the fight, so I'm not constantly having to rescan. It's not the end of the world, and it hardly ruins the combat, but I thought it was worth bringing up, as it did cause some bother at points. Diving into the actual combat, you utilize your personal weapon setup to take advantage of the machine's weak spots, blow up explosive points, detach weapons to use to your advantage, or set off elemental chain reactions with your specially tipped arrows. Different machines present different challenges, and you have to use the same fundamental line of thinking, but in vastly different ways to tackle different machines. And I do feel in Forbidden West, the machines are far more varied. In Zero Dawn, there were some standouts like the Stormbird or Thunderjaw, but Forbidden West has some such as the Shell Snapper, Slitherfang, Tremortusk, Slaughterspine, and a fucking Lapras, all of which are tough as nails and put up one hell of a fight, forcing you to really utilize everything at your disposal. I found myself using a very specific weapon set after experimenting, mostly a collection of hunter bows with various elemental arrows, as well as a sharpshot bow and a spike thrower because I like to break my video games. But those aren't the best set of weapons, they're just the ones that worked for me. Other than, of course, the spike thrower. That is unequivocally the best weapon in the game. On the whole, though, your engagements with machines are always thrilling and thoughtful, more so than ever in the sequel. I find myself still wanting to hop back in and try another arena challenge or go machine hunting because I'm a criminal, purely for the thrill of the combat loop, and honestly, not a lot of games manage to do that for me. Melee combat is insanely improved in Forbidden West, and it makes such a difference to the overall combat experience, except for when you're fighting in pit fights and it's completely broken. Something about Zero Dawn was that the melee combat felt tedious to engage in with human enemies, as a shot to the head was almost always more effective, and with machines you could very easily cheese some of them with a few heavy melee attacks. They've completely rebalanced the damage output from the spear in this game, as you find that with machines, the melee attacks are more used as a way to stagger a machine in order to reposition yourself, more than a way to actually beat them in a fight. Meaning you have to be more thoughtful with all of the techniques we just discussed. And the human enemies have been entirely redesigned, now wearing armor similar to that of machine parts. Each piece of armor protects them individually, and picking them off is your best way of dealing major damage. Using a combo of bows to pick off armor and your melee attacks to deal damage, engaging with human enemies is now far more enjoyable. As well, the melee combat actually has some depth to it. Not crazy depth, mind you. You can't play the game as a melee game, which of course would be against the entire point, but the melee combat offers far more range than it did before. There's now a combo system, meaning different combos are now going to offer different outcomes. Using a shield break to drop an enemy's guard stance, or using a brute force combo to deal large amounts of damage in a swift blow, or using a jump attack to land a blow and then dive into the air and catapult yourself from there body, normally knocking off a piece of armor. It's really up to you how you utilize the melee combat in any certain situation with human enemies. Unless you're in a pit fight and the game forces you to do it in a certain way, but it's broken and you keep failing over and over and over and over and over again. On top of the combos, there's also the Resonator Blast. Once you've dealt enough attacks, Aloy's spear will glow, and when you land an attack with the glowing spear, it'll stagger your enemy and a body part will begin to glow as well. Hitting that with an arrow causes huge damage and often can outright defeat an enemy. Using a wide selection of useful combos in conjunction with the Resonator Blast is your best bet to deal with heavily armored human enemies. To top off the combat, there's also a few abilities you can gain that add to combat scenarios. I didn't end up exploring all of them, so this part of the script might be completely valueless to you all. But there are some really nice abilities, such as adding power to your bow for a short time, making your ranged projectiles have knockback properties, or my personal favourite, I don't know what the fuck is happening on the screen right now, or my personal favourite, applying a temporary shield weave to your current armour, taking something that was part of Zero Dawn's lore and applying it to Forbidden West. I do wish there was a tiny little story reason for it, to say Aloy repurposed the shield weaver tech into a portable device, but nonetheless, it was really cool, and the idea of having special abilities you could spec into with skill points is rewarding. I usually hate leveling and skill trees and all that nonsense in my games. It's often bloated and cumbersome. There is a much bigger skill tree in Horizon Forbidden West, and while at first that may come across as overwhelming, I didn't find it so. The main reason is less because it was well made and more because you're actively getting skill points for every single thing you do. Complete a quest, skill point. Complete a side activity, skill point. Level up, skill points. Complete main story missions, 50 skill points. Okay, that was an exaggeration, but you get given so many it doesn't even matter. What this sort of does is make the progression totally arbitrary, but kind of to the game's benefit. You can still spec into whatever you want to spec into, but it just means you're never grinding. Literally never. You'll always have some skill points in your skill points sack. Why'd I say sack? And you can use those whenever you feel like getting some new skills, like Resilient Trapper, or, you know, something more useful. The most fun this skill tree offers are the abilities that we already discussed. I can't really work out if it's to the game's detriment or benefit, maybe a bit of both. All I know is the skill tree doesn't get in the way, and that's what I was worried about the most. Now, what would a video game be without crafting your own gear? Some would argue good. There are plenty of ways you can deck out Aloy in this game, like I already mentioned. There are tons of weapons, new and old, to find, craft, or buy, but on top of that, there are so many different outfits, all of which resemble the culture and places within the Horizon lore. Outfits from Kaja, Oseram, and Nora, along with Utaru and Tallnecks, are in this game. Some found, some crafted, and some bought, as well as some being rewards for arena and hunting challenges. They all come in varying degrees of rarity, with the higher the rarity, meaning the higher the stats are. You can also upgrade armors at a crafting bench, meaning you're able to keep using a particular outfit even if you out-level it. A common armor is never going to be quite as powerful as a legendary armor, but you can keep it close by bothering to level it up, or just not doing that and dying a lot because you're me. I will say that it's strange how the shops for armors are a bit of a mix and match. I expected particular tribes to carry particular outfits, but it all seems to be kind of random. For some reason, random Utaru and Tallnecks tribes stock Kaja outfits, which is odd given they hate the Kaja and just came out of a war with them. Sure, they could have salvaged them from battles, but it seems a bit weird to spruce up your enemy's battle garments to then sell them. I'm sure the Polish after World War II weren't selling Nazi uniforms at every corner shop. You can also make your outfits more your own in this entry with dyes. Dyes are really cool in any game and they're very welcome here. I would have liked more color options and more control over your colors, as some of the combos are simply ugly as fuck. What the hell is that? But there are some really nice ones that I landed on and stuck with for a long part of my playthrough. So, I think that's pretty much it for the first half of this video. I didn't establish originally I was doing this in two halves, but we are, so live with it. We've covered the gameplay loop, the world structure, your exploration, and all of those aspects that play into why the game ends up being so very engaging to play, but the core reason you're playing this game, or at least the core reason I was playing, is to find out what happens next. I was driven by story. The game is driven by story, and I think that's what brings all of the game systems together to form a meaning. Why am I playing Horizon? Now, in my original script that we're not talking about, I did go through in chronological order to discuss the story. I pretty much touched on every single plot point, and reading it back, it was bad. It read like a list of things. Aloy did this next, and I liked that thing happened, and I'm better than that. If you do want a piece of content though, where I go through in alphabetical order, alphabetical or what? If you do want a piece of content though, where I go through in chronological order and talk about everything, then you can check out our 4 Pillars podcast episode on Horizon Forbidden West, because it's chaos. We go over everything. It was so much fun, and I think if you like Horizon, you'll really enjoy that podcast episode too. I mean, if you're this far into the video, just go listen to the goddamn podcast. This is basically a podcast anyway. A story like this story deserves something a bit better written, unlike that sentence was. I've decided to split the narrative section up. Let's talk about Aloy's character first, her relationship to others, and the arc she goes on, and then we can talk about the crazy fucking plot, because wow, it's certainly a plot, and I mean that in the absolute best way possible. And of course, there'll be spoilers for this next bit, so if you want to avoid those spoilers, press that big red X at the top right of your browser page and make me go away. Also, leave in the comments your debit card number and the 3 numbers on the back. Who is Aloy? Well, a well-rounded and written character is comprised of core traits that are established early on, developed upon, and can be used as a marker for how characters logically would react in any given situation. So long as you make those traits compelling and traits that play into the narrative, then you've successfully written a character. Now, of course, this information might sound obvious to you if you've seen any of my previous videos, watched any character analysis video online, or anybody on the planet that isn't the lead writer of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. On another note, gaming trends, what is this camera angle? You ever done an interview before, bro? But it's important we establish this so we can better understand who Aloy is and if Forbidden West represents her correctly and competently. Within the first few hours of Zero Dawn, we're shown a ton of Aloy's core traits, and traits that will be with her and drive her throughout the game. First up, we have curiosity. Aloy as a child and adult is incredibly curious. It's the driving force of the game.
Hi! Happy birthday, Isaac! Daddy sure does love his little big man.
Show me. Show me again.
I can do. He's right behind you.
Hunt until you've gathered the parts for fire arrows.
Fire arrows? What kind of trouble are we talking about? What are they hunting out there? Beyond the embrace. Can't be just one machine. That carcass. What sort of beast was that?
In a moment, we shall bless the proving.
Where's this from? When are you my mother? You made them obey you. How? Wait. 350,000. That's hundreds of years ago. What's going on?
If you had had a child, Elizabeth, what would you have wished for him or her?
I guess I would have wanted her to be curious.
Okay, that last example was a bit on the nose. Elizabeth outwardly describing Aloy as curious doesn't show an example of Aloy being curious, but it more does show that the devs intended for her to be curious, which they do achieve based on the other examples that I showed. I could show loads more, but we'd be here all day. She is curious throughout all of Horizon Zero Dawn. It's the reason she ventures into the metal world. It's the reason she leaves the Embrace, because she's desperately curious about who she is. To suggest she's not would make you objectively a foolish person. Sheps. Second core trait is her determination. She's always had a drive about her, a sense that she's made for more than what she currently has. And of course, this plays directly into the narrative, as it turns out she literally was made for more than she currently had. We see it as a kid, and we see it as she becomes an adult.
So how do I make them tell me?
The matriarchs? There is a way, perhaps.
So tell me.
It would be dangerous.
How?
It would take years of training.
I don't care.
Precision. Not enough. Must be perfect.
Malfunction. Malfunction. Malfunction.
Are you kidding me?
You don't hear me laughing.
Shut up. There's gotta be another way. Hey! Elizabeth Sobeck here! Requesting access!
Access request acknowledged. Root command functions available. Do you wish to proceed?
I do! Get me through this door!
She is a curse made flesh. She will be the end.
Excuse me.
Aloy!
Talk amongst yourselves.
This is a trait that often can push people away. We see it with Rost and even more minor characters she meets. Sometimes Aloy's determination to complete her quest can cause her relationships with people to falter, which shows her priorities to how she deals with different situations. Third trait is her love of people. Aloy is able to connect with pretty much anyone. She's the one person who's able to break down barriers. It doesn't matter that she grew up a Nora, the fact that she was an outcast means that she doesn't truly identify with any one place or people.
I don't belong to you! There's a whole world beyond your borders, whole tribes of people just as good as you, and it is all in danger.
It's a world worth fighting for.
Aloy is able to make friends with Nora warriors, team up with Oseram captains, have an alliance with the Sun King of Viridian, and assist the entirety of the Cut in Banuk lands. Aloy transcends being part of a clan and is someone who clearly has the means to unify people. Through the side quests and ultimately in the Battle of Meridian, we see this take place on a smaller scale than total unity, but we see this core trait shine through. You may see these two traits as being at head with each other. The determination that pushes people away, and an inherent love of people. Well, you'd be right. That's exactly what's tackled in the character arc that she goes on in Forbidden West, but we'll get onto that. Aloy has plenty of other traits. A confidence bordering on arrogance at times, often letting her down. She has a sense of humor, she's good with a bow, athletic, a lone wolf, and in some cases even has a superiority complex. These traits aren't all innately good things, some of them are bad things, but that comes with writing a character that has depth. All of these traits can be spotted time and time again as Aloy makes decisions and forms relationships with people across Horizon Zero Dawn. So how do these core traits translate to Forbidden West? Well, I'm certainly glad you asked me that question because I would like to explore that very thing. Aloy is a woman, which means of course she's subject to far more criticism and scrutiny than a male character ever would be, because gamers are just the best. Women, of course, can never be assertive and confident because it comes across as cocky and arrogant. Women, of course, can never make a joke because everything they say is serious and insulting. Women can never vocally mention how they have to deal with men causing them problems because it means that they hate males entirely. If you haven't guessed, these are the wholly illogical conclusions made by a large group of gamers on Twitter.com and other such places of mind-numbingly poor video game discourse. A lot of people have simply decided that Aloy hates men and is out to make a political statement. This is what I would call misplaced paranoia. Go see a therapist. One of the examples given is usually the idea that the Nora are a matriarchy, and so of course they're trying to make a political statement because women could never be in charge. That's utterly ridiculous. Let's not forget, however, that most male characters we meet, bar a couple, Aloy gets on with. Rost, Teb, Val, Errands, and that's only in the first hour of the game. She gets on with these people. They're men. And then look at the matriarchs themselves. Only Tirsa is actually kind to Aloy, the others actively shun her, insult her to her face. They're women. I'm not sure this game sets up the idea that it wants to put women on a pedestal no matter what. I think what it's trying to say is that there's nuance to a people and some will blindly follow leaders and others will not. I simply cannot find any sort of forced agenda or political message in this game with regards to women being superior and all men being bad, because it's not there. That message doesn't exist. Just look at the sympathy on her face for a horrible man that she hates. Let's get back to character though and focus on the actual facts of Aloy as a character rather than focusing on benign discourse about how she's a man-hating robot, because I just can't. Aloy's curiosity in this game develops from that into something else. Of course, by this point she's familiar with old world tech. We see her capable and confident in what she's doing, using the focus, accessing old software. It's less of a curiosity now and more of a purpose. Without delving into old world ruins, without exploring these places, she feels lost. When we meet Aloy at the start of this game, she's left Meridian. Everyone was celebrating and she simply left, because she doesn't feel she has a place. Her place is to follow in the footsteps of Elizabeth and save the world, an outcast by choice. Aloy, who we see as having a strong connection to people in Zero Dawn, is actively pushing that aspect of who she is away. We see it with Val at the start.
What are we doing? Must be urgent since you left so fast.
I should...
Oh no. I've been tracking you a long way. It's okay. You're stuck with me now. Like bark on wood.
Varl, I'm sorry.
You have a sharp bite sometimes, you know?
But I have to keep searching. And fast. And whatever risks I have to take, I will. and it doesn't make sense to have someone with me.
We see it with Errands later on.
I'll catch up with you there.
Well, I guess that's sort of like a goodbye.
I'm sorry?
You? Sorry? Ugh. Yeah, that'd be a first.
Where is this coming from?
Now, after the battle at the Spire, when you took off, you left without so much as a handshake. I mean, people like me, we fought and bled at your side, Aloy. You just disappear? What kind of person does that? Now, let me guess. You're in a rush, right? So whatever you need, ask away.
Aloy feels that her sole connection is to Elizabeth Sobek, the only person who could ever understand her. Her vision at the start of this game solidifies this mindset. She finds herself running to Elizabeth to hug her until she fades away and is taken. Aloy is alone in this world with one purpose on her mind, and that's to see through Elizabeth's dream of a new world. In doing this, Aloy begins to push away the people that care about her. Like I mentioned before, Val and Errand are major people in her life that she keeps choosing to run from. Friends who wish to help, but Aloy's sense of purpose that sprouted from curiosity and her determination pull her away from them. There's a conflict within her that is pulling her more towards Elizabeth and further away from Aloy. This is something that she has to contend with across the game itself. The core moment that really starts to shift our arc is after the events at the Hades Proving Lab, where shit gets... We'll come back to this. Aloy went into this on her own. She charged in head first. She's filled with purpose and determination to see through her quest, and she nearly dies for it. She almost loses her life and lets the world perish, all because she felt she had to do this alone. Usually I hate the trope of hero feels like they have to do it alone, even when friends clearly want to help. I'm looking at you, fucking Harry Potter.
Nobody else is going to die. Not for me.
But for Aloy, this works exceedingly well, given her traits established in Zero Dawn, and the arc she went on within that game. Discovering who she is, learning of Hades, being the only person other than Silence who could understand any of what was truly happening, it makes perfect sense that she'd want to do this alone. She's been alone her whole life. She had to figure out how to stop Hades pretty much alone, and having others around her would only have made her job more difficult, a job she believes is of paramount importance. There's a fantastic moment within the Hades Proving Lab that really works to solidify the idea that Aloy is changing. There's a recording where one of Elizabeth's colleagues invites her to a party to celebrate something they've been doing. It doesn't really matter why. Elizabeth declines this, and this is what follows.
Color me confounded, Liz. How is it that someone like you, a paragon, damn near saint, could love this world so damn much, but no one in it? I mean, have you ever even had a friend?
Travis was wrong. Elizabeth was trying to make sure life had a future. She cared about everyone.
I'm not so sure. The exceptional walk a path of solitude, Aloy, as you and I are well aware of.
This is a really well done reflection of where Aloy is at mentally. Her one distinctive trait that tears her apart from Elizabeth is that she loves people. Like we established before, she is the one who links all the tribes. She transcends the different factions, and she's losing that. By chasing what Elizabeth was, someone she put on a pedestal in the first game, she's beginning to lose who she is, and this is clearly a moment where she begins to think about that. Moving on, Val saves her, we meet Zoe, and then we start to put Gaia back together. All things we'll come back to later on, I'm sure about that. I haven't written it yet though. This is where things begin to dramatically shift because the game becomes Mass Effect. We unlock the base, our hub for the game where all of our allies and Gaia reside. This was a genius choice for this game. One of the core aspects that a lot of people criticize Zero Dawn for was the lack of attention to supporting characters. And yeah, they're right. I always liked Errand and Val, but holy shit, they're incredible in Forbidden West. Not only do they give side characters more time in the spotlight, they make the supporting cast a fundamentally important part of Aloy's arc. Across the game, you meet more people as you go out in search of Gaia's sub-functions. Zoe is the first, followed by Kotalu and Alva, a name that is far too similar to my girlfriend's name and just makes me feel like I'm mispronouncing Elva every time I fucking say it. She also streams on Twitch, so if you want to drop her a follow, drop her a follow. If I'm going to talk about her, I might as well plug her, because it's my video and I can do what I want, can't I? It's actually more relevant than I originally thought, because she's currently playing through Zero Dawn and then Forbidden West for the very first time. So there you go, tying it all back around, aren't I? Anyway, these are characters that are superbly built up in their own right, but also work well to allow Aloy the necessary development to form bonds, to rebuild who she is, and to restore what she lost in her quest for Elizabeth's dream. Now remember that bit because we'll be coming back to it a little bit later, and there's a really nice piece of juxtaposition they do with Aloy's arc. They also do this through well-placed loyalty missions, where you venture out with one of your core team characters and complete a mission that's important to them, learning more about who they are and seeing them grow as people alongside Aloy. Helps you connect with them and feel a bond, more so than just being told there is one. In discovering her connection to these people she meets on her journey into the Forbidden West, Aloy also rediscovers what she's fighting for. In probably my favourite quest from the game, Sea of Sands, we see Aloy visit the ruins of Las Vegas. And other than it being absolutely stunning as a piece of world design and level design, this is a turning point for Aloy. Morland is a character she meets here. I absolutely loved this guy, and I wish to an extent he'd ended up in the base too, but I also see why they didn't do that. Zoe, Katalu, and Alva are essentially outcasts in their own way, and it makes sense for them to join Aloy, whereas Morland wasn't, so it wouldn't be tonally consistent. Anyway, you get to see for the first time in a while Aloy directly connecting with a person she meets out in the world. They get on well, they think in similar ways, and there's a brilliant chemistry there. He's also another example of Aloy really getting on well with a man when she supposedly hates them, but I digress. Morland's passion for Vegas is apparent, and Aloy really admires that. After searching the old ruins, learning about Stanley Chen and the history of Vegas, the ending sequence really speaks for itself as a moment where Aloy stands in the ruins of Vegas and feels hope, feels passion, and feels connection to the people of the world that she's trying to save.
Oh, the show my old Gramps always wanted.
There's another.
His dream realized, his old Gramps' legacy ensured. Our hero beheld the sea of desert lights and wept at his good fortune.
When I saw the Embers as a child, I never dreamed they could be like this. Thank you, Aloy. Well, did you find what you were looking for?
I did. And now I have to move on.
Oh. Well, come back when you can. I got big plans for this place.
I thought you wanted to put on shows with the Embers back in the Claim.
Oh, no. This is the show. Oh, can you imagine? Folks from all over the land coming to take it all in. Plus some food and a nice place to stay.
Not to mention a variety of entertainment venues.
Don't forget, games of chance. Plenty of shards to be had there for certain.
A new dream, huh? I hope you make it happen. Goodbye, gentlemen.
This delve was a story for the ages. All thanks to you.
No longer is Aloy striving to be Elizabeth, she's Aloy, and she's saving the world for her own reasons. It's absolutely beautifully done and works so well as a piece of character writing. Now remember earlier when I mentioned keeping in mind that piece of character writing about Aloy? These are characters that are superbly built up in their own right, but also work well to allow Aloy the necessary development to form bonds, to rebuild who she is, and to restore what she lost in her quest for Elizabeth's dream. Now remember that bit because we'll be coming back to it a little bit later, and there's a really nice piece of juxtaposition they do with Aloy's arc. Well, let's dive into that a little bit. Aloy loses herself in fighting for Liz's dream, the dream of a new world, one where people would live and work together, a world where people would begin from scratch and learn from the mistakes of the old one. In fighting for that and striving to do what Liz did, Aloy falls from being Aloy, only to find herself once again after a long character journey. Like, I just explained all of that already. The clever juxtaposition here is that of Tilda. Tilda is a character introduced midway through the game and is part of the forces of our antagonists, the Zeniths. Now she's revealed towards the end to be kind of a good guy with some secrets, and ultimately feels great shame for leaving Liz to die alone on Earth when she jetted off into space. She wanted Liz to join her and feels bad that she didn't. It's also important to note that Tilda and Liz had a brief relationship, which not only canonizes Elizabeth as gay, but could potentially characterize Aloy as being gay, which I did always expect, but I'm sure the gamers won't be too happy about another piece of forced woke agenda. The interesting piece from this is that Tilda also wants to fulfill Elizabeth's dream, same as Aloy does. The difference in their approach comes in a cool piece of symbolism in Tilda's vault. Once Aloy awakes after she walks through a corridor comprised of old pieces of art from the history of Earth. Tilda kept them because she believes it represents humanity's beauty. The very clear and interesting part from this is the juxtaposition between Tilda and Aloy. Both want Liz's dream to come to fruition, however Tilda is clinging on to the old world, seeing that as humanity, whereas Aloy is fighting for a world that exists now, the new world, the world that Liz actually fought for. So although both of their goals are somewhat aligned, you can see this interesting difference between the two that clearly characterizes Tilda as having misplaced love for humanity, which of course comes to fruition when she goes absolutely crazy and tries to kidnap Aloy. We'll get back to it. I think the final piece of Aloy's arc within this game is her relationship with Beta, a character introduced towards the beginning, but someone who doesn't become major until the midpoint. Beta is a clone of Elizabeth Sobek, the same as Aloy is. However, Beta was created by the Zeniths for the sole purpose of accessing Zero Dawn related facilities on Earth. She was abused, kept locked away, and treated like a slave, an outcast, I suppose you could say. What I love about this character is that she frustrates Aloy, and by proxy, that frustrates the audience. Aloy can't understand why a clone of Elizabeth Sobek, a clone of her, is being so scared, so pessimistic, lacking all of the core traits that made Liz and Aloy who they are. It's incredibly insensitive because we obviously can see as the audience that Beta has been through a traumatic experience, that she is damaged and hurt, but Aloy doesn't get that. It's only as she begins to find her connection to who she is again that she begins to finally understand Beta. As she builds herself back up and stops chasing the idea of being Elizabeth, Aloy finally begins to grow closer to Beta, and it all culminates in this scene.
So why can't you find the strength to do what has to be done, like Elizabeth would? Don't you think I've thought about that? I don't know what piece of Elizabeth I'm missing. I don't know what you have that I don't. I look through all the data from your focus. You were raised as an outcast, shunned, and isolated just like me, so what's the difference? What's my defect? Beta, you don't have a defect. Beta, look, it's not a piece of Elizabeth. The difference is, I had him. Frost. He raised you, trained you, but he was never warm or loving. The day he died, the day he gave you that charm, he was going to abandon you. He wanted me to embrace the tribe. But then he gave his life for mine. He loved me in his own way. And that was enough. What did it feel like? It was like having a strength that was always there. It's still there. Even now I hear him in my head when things get bad. When it looks impossible, look deeper. And then fight like you can win. You don't have to go on the mission. We'll find another way. I'll go.
I had to let the whole thing play out because it's so goddamn good. Aloy and Beta are both clones of Elizabeth. However, it goes to show how your upbringing and surroundings can vastly change your outlook on the world. Aloy is who she is because of Rust, because of that love and that care and understanding. Despite being an outcast, Aloy is optimistic, caring, determined, curious, and has a deep love of people. Beta has that potential too. The same way Aloy found who she was again through her relationships to people and the world around her, Aloy can be that for Beta, giving the both of them somewhere and someone to call home.
Only option for what? What did you tell her?
That is between me and my sister.
Sylens is a character who is important to Aloy. Sorry, I've completely lost my place in the scripts. Sylens is a character who contributes significantly to Aloy's growth, while also having quite a compelling arc of his own. Sylens doesn't get a lot of screen time in this game, but I do feel honestly it's to the benefit of the character in a weird roundabout way. Aloy and Sylens formed a strange sort of relationship in the first game. Both of them needed each other to stop Hades and to gain knowledge. They never really liked each other, but they did have a bond. The thing I love so much about Sylens is that he was an anti-hero. He was never really a villain, but he was never an altruistic character either. He was self-serving and looked down upon the simple people of the world who didn't know any better, but had an admiration for Aloy that he kept tightly guarded. By the point we finally catch up with him in Forbidden West at the Hades Proving Lab, we see Aloy has become far more confident in her time away from him. Remember, there was a 6-month period between the ending of Zero Dawn and the start of Forbidden West. And with Aloy realizing he double-crossed her somewhat, he's on very thin ice with her.
Trick me again, Sylens, and our next conversation will be face-to-face. Though you won't have much to say, on account of my spear being buried in your throat.
Once the Zeniths get to the final chamber and try to get in, Sylens of course tries to calm Aloy down, suggesting they won't hurt her. She, after feeling once again betrayed by Sylens keeping secrets, destroys her focus with the spyware and says goodbye to him for good. We don't see Sylens again for some time. He's absent for most of the game. We know he's equipping the rebels, we don't know why, and we know he's working on weapons to take down the Zenith shields, we don't know why. And these elements do actually characterize him over the course of the game, absent of any actual first-hand knowledge of what he's doing. We're left to speculate. What I like quite a bit is when Sylens does come back on the scene, after defeating Regala and speaking with Sylens over the focus, we once again see Sylens doubt Aloy's actions.
Wrong. I don't need it to knock the army to defeat the Zeniths.
Oh, Aloy. Have you learned nothing about the enemy we're up against?
More than you, hiding whatever hole you found. My idea is just better than anything you ever came up with.
Go on.
However, this time, Aloy has a confidence in herself that she's built up over the course of the game. After having her friends learn of the old world, of the technology, sharing that with them and working as a team, she no longer relies on Sylens at all. But he is starting to rely on her. It's revealed later that Sylens had no idea that the Zeniths would try and kill her, and that was a miscalculation on his part, which definitely redeems him in our eyes somewhat. Sylens comes across as someone who is out for himself, but with misunderstood intentions. Aloy, who sees the world in a very altruistic light, feels that Sylens is a bad person, and because of that, we do too to an extent. But the reality is that Sylens is not a bad person. He doesn't want bad things, he just cares about himself more than he cares about others, and ultimately, this is what brings them together. After joining Aloy on her final assault on the Zenith base for seemingly personal reasons, Sylens heads to jet off to another world with the Apollo database to escape the impending attack from Nemesis, which we'll get back to. Sylens asks Aloy to come, suggesting that were Elizabeth here, she'd do it.
You wouldn't be abandoning life, you'd be saving a seed for a new world. Just as Elizabeth did. It's the choice she made. The sacrifice of all that is for the hope of what might be. If she were here in your place, she would board that shuttle, Aloy.
Found her.
Is she hurt?
Aloy doesn't say a word, but you can tell what she's thinking. At this point, her arc for the game is complete. She is no longer chasing after Elizabeth, she's simply Aloy. She ends up being better than Elizabeth, and so Sylens changes his mind. This might seem like it comes out of left field, but I love what this moment symbolizes. Sylens admired the old ones, he admired Elizabeth, and seeing Aloy's plans work time and time again, seeing her outsmart even him, he comes to see her as being greater than Elizabeth. He has an admiration for her that pushes him to stick around and follow her because he begins to believe in her dream too, which sets up her arc for the third entry. Aloy needs to do what Elizabeth couldn't do, not to sacrifice this world in hope for a new one, but to save the world they live in now, and all that came from a character journey of self-discovery. Blimey. We've really been talking about character for a while. I didn't expect this section to take up so much time, although thinking about it, it does make perfect sense. But with Aloy's character fully explored, I hope to God I covered all my bases to avoid comments misrepresenting what I'm saying. I suppose we can move on to the story section of the video to discuss the actual plot. Okay, so let's go ahead and establish what the core plot of this game is, because it tries to do lots of things. The main plot is that the world is dying. Stopping Hades slowed things down, but the world is still coming to an end because Gaia is no more. Aloy is searching for a backup of Gaia and getting trolled a lot.
It's nothing but a fake.
Lol, you mad bro. And her goal is to find a copy of Gaia, restore it, and then go around collecting the sub-functions to restore Gaia's full power so she can absorb Hephaestus and save the planet. Now this stuff is the normal part of the story, our hero's goal. The rest of the story is absolutely fucking insane. Every story always needs some sort of antagonist, so as well as Aloy trying to collect the sub-functions and restore Gaia, her enemies are trying to do the same thing, but they want to wipe out the planet and start it all over again. Also, we think, but we'll get back to that. I swear, if I say we'll get to that one more fucking time in this video, I'll have a mental breakdown. The enemies of this game are humans that left Earth 1,000 years ago on a spaceship that was supposedly destroyed, except it wasn't destroyed. They lived on another planet for 1,000 years because they discovered the key to immortality, making them kind of aliens, only to return to Earth in order to wipe the biosphere clean and start over again and make the world in their own image. Can you tell why this is a controversial story yet? There's been a lot of talk about this story, some claiming it's too over the top, others loving the balls to the wall approach, and others feeling the game just seemed to lack a purpose and felt pointless. I can understand all of these angles. Zero Dawn established what it was, and Forbidden West sort of pulls the rug from under you and says, but also, more though. For me, this worked. I mean, I was aware of the Zenith's existence, the Odyssey was mentioned within Zero Dawn, and there was a lot of theories surrounding it. Having that explored as a central focus of Forbidden West was pretty much the exact thing I could get down with. Now, for the rest of the narrative section, I don't feel there is so much of an analysis of events I can provide. I think most of the meaning in Forbidden West comes from the character writing and the suspense of the events that unfold. However, I do believe that this game solidifies itself strongly as a middle part, a la Halo 2, Mass Effect 2, Empire Strikes Back, Bolt 2. Oh wait, Disney refused to make that movie when it would be the first movie ever to sell 1 trillion tickets. Make it, you cowards. With the game's clear focus on character building, that really is what's central to a middle game in a trilogy. The first entry tends to establish world, a threat, our hero. The second entry usually spends time to flesh out the world, do far more character work, take them on a huge journey of self-development, while tackling a threat that isn't a core threat but is supplementary to it, and then ends with a setup for the true focus to come forth with a much more plot-centric third entry. All the games I listed, Halo 2, Mass Effect 2, and The Empire Strikes Back, the famous video game, I follow this pattern, and so does Horizon Forbidden West. This game is all about character, with a narrative that deeply plays into that and builds a team of characters that matter to us while fleshing out a greater narrative to be explored in a third entry. I absolutely love this approach, and I think it shows planning, foresight, and most importantly, I get to play another Horizon game. Now, before discussing the ending, which of course we're going to talk about, let's dive into some of the makeup of the story. No, I meant... That was a terrible joke. This game does some really cool stuff with its design philosophy around building main quests in a way that completely trumps the first game. No! Starting us off after the very opening, It takes us back to Viridian, which was an absolutely genius idea, allowing us to feel grounded in a space that we're familiar with. I mean, look, there's a statue of Aloy. It shows that time has passed. She's famous now. We've got these guys from the side quests. Even Sun King Avad is here hitting on Aloy. Bro, she's probably gay. This was a marvelous section that screams Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, another game that does the middle entry very, very well. There's plenty of little moments all throughout the game, but listing those and telling you what I thought would make for a poor video. Like I said, if you want to hear my thoughts on every little detail in a bit more of a disorganized way, check out our Spoilercast podcast on Forbidden West, link below. If you haven't already got it open in a separate tab ready to listen to after this is finished while you go and do collectibles on Forbidden West, then you should do that, is what I'm saying. Now, like I said, the middle game in a trilogy's main job is to build and flesh out. That means in terms of character, but also in terms of world and concept. Forbidden West really takes its time to spread its wings, sometimes literally, and tell a story that explores Horizon as a concept. Using the Zeniths as an antagonist, you're able to build character and a team while also exploring an element of the lore that was only briefly touched upon in the past, and then have that all culminate in the ending as it sets up what's to come for a third game. I do find this game very, very similar to Mass Effect in that regard. Brief and minor spoilers for the Mass Effect trilogy, by the way, so skip to the timestamp on screen to avoid them. In Mass Effect 1, we discover the Reapers are real, we establish Shepard, we are introduced to the Milky Way galaxy, and then we work to stop one single Reaper from destroying the Citadel. In Mass Effect 2, the Reapers aren't even present. We spend most of our time building out the world, developing Shepard and our core team, and then learning about the Collectors, something that ends up playing into the Reaper threat by the very end, in which everything culminates to set up Mass Effect 3, in which the world is threatened by thousands of Reapers, and everything becomes very plot heavy again, having to save the world from a colossal threat. The terrible ending of Mass Effect 3, I'm joking. Horizon follows a similar pattern. Zero Dawn spends time getting to know Aloy, build up the world and establish a core threat to the world. Forbidden West spends time building up Aloy, building out the world, establishing a core team, and a threat which ultimately ties into the main threat from the first game and sets up a core mission for the final entry in the trilogy to come. What I really love about the Nemesis reveal is that it all comes back around. We're essentially fighting the true threat from the first game. Hades ended up being nothing but a symptom. The Zeniths as an enemy allowed for growth and development, but ultimately explained the signal that woke Hades and that isn't over. Nemesis, a rogue AI from the Sirius system, is tracking the Zeniths to Earth to destroy all life. The one thing we still don't know is the original cause of the glitch in the Pharaoh robots.
Or don't sign, and I will make sure they and everyone else on this planet knows the real cause of the glitch.
Jesus, Liz. You don't have to threaten me.
Potentially, this could tie everything together in a neat thematic bow to link the old world and the new world and have it be a repeat of the events that took place. However, this time, Aloy wins, and by proxy, so does Elizabeth. The whole purpose of this game is to develop, build, grow, and flesh out everything that's presented to us in Zero Dawn. Like I've said probably 3 times, I'm repeating myself, Jesus Christ, whilst using that to grow and set up the finale of the trilogy. I think it's beautifully done, perfectly crafted, and nails all the core points that I wanted them to, except for Val shaving his beard. Dude, grow it back. Oh fuck, he's dead. Let's talk about Val's death actually before I move on. What an incredible sequence of events. They spend this entire game building up Val, making you bloody love this man, and then they just take it all away from you. It's heartbreaking. I was waiting for ages for it to just get undone, and it never does. It's real. The burial scene is beautiful too, tying together the Utaru seed pouch tradition from Zoe, who obviously Val was very close to, using the seeds of the flowers his sister from Zero Dawn would tie to her spear, giving Vala some closure too, and calling back to the start of Zero Dawn, and having Val face eastward towards Plainsong and also towards the Nora Sacred Lands. It was a really demoralizing death because we see Val come so far. He wanted to do so much. He wanted to teach the Nora everything he'd learned, wanted to help Aloy accomplish her mission, and sadly, we'll never get to see any of it. It was a ballsy move and it pays off narratively. I will always miss Val. I also hope in the third game we get to see Aloy travel back to the Nora Sacred Lands to speak to Sona and let her know that Val died and have that conversation. I think it'd be a really emotional and poignant moment. But all this isn't the only story in Forbidden West. It's for sure the core story, but it's not the only story they try to tell. There's another one layered beneath it. Or on top of it? I don't know, but the entire story of Regala and her rebels is present too. And it's Yeah, look, it's not perfect. The Tallnecks conflict is interesting, but the conflict between Regala and Aloy is, I don't know, it's just sort of there. I never felt this storyline lived up to that of the Eclipse from Zero Dawn, mainly because Aloy had a direct connection to that story. The Eclipse murdered everyone at the Proving. They were the reason Ross died. They were out to get her because she was a clone of Elizabeth. It was integral, it was personal. In Forbidden West, Regala's rebels feel pretty tacked on to what otherwise would be a really tight story. I feel like they just needed to have a story reason for bandit camps, and so they decided to reinvent another rebel faction, and that's really the only reason she exists. It's pretty Ubisoft behavior if you ask me, although Ubisoft would make Regala a man because they hate women. I personally hope in the third game they don't try to recreate this again, but instead let the main story shine through and do away with the need for a rebel arc. It worked in the first game, it felt forced in the second, we don't need it again. A good supplementary story, however, was diving into Pharaoh's tomb. There was no way I was making this video and not talking about Thebes. I mean, what a goddamn set piece mission. This takes place sort of outside of the confines of the main story and works as a supplementary piece that brings some closure to a lot of the core moving parts from Zero Dawn. Learning of Pharaoh's fate, learning of what he did through the various datapads, fighting goddamn corruptors, this whole quest is just brilliant. There's a reason it's the thumbnail of this video, and it's not just because it's pretty. I mean, it is. And not to mention this fucking guy.
I am Pharaoh, renewed. My essence is the same as his. Across the years, across the generations, his soul is my soul. His will is my will.
I'm so glad he got crushed and fell into lava. Little bitch. The more I think about it though, the more I do find an issue with this section, however, and that's the fate of Ted Faro. Of course, the general Horizon community hate this guy, and for good reason. I hate him too, and so I don't think the devs at any point wanted to redeem him or give him redeemable traits. He's a representation of corporate greed. He's sort of got to be portrayed as pure evil for that symbolism to remain intact, but I do feel that just on a character basis, I maybe would have preferred a more calm ending to his story. Maybe in the final room you find his decayed body and a final recording talking about how he was terrified of his own mortality, that the tests destroyed his body and forced him ever closer to death, that his want to live forever actually shortened his life, and maybe in his final moments he apologizes to Elizabeth, that he was wrong and that she was right, and he attempts to atone. In doing so, we could have seen a vulnerable side to Ted, giving him redeemable qualities that allow us to sympathize with the man who destroyed the planet. It would be powerful to attempt that, along with of course giving us some symbolism for trying to live forever, inevitably bringing your demise, a parallel to the fate of the Zeniths. Ted becoming a Resident Evil boss that's killed off screen felt a bit too out there and wacky for Horizon. I don't think it's bad, I guess I just prefer the more subtle take that I manufactured in my head. I'm open to counterpoints though, comment away, just please be nice to me. If I get one more mean comment, I think I'm gonna go take a nap on a railway track. Overall, I do think the story does a wonderful job of tying up loose ends from Horizon Zero Dawn, playing heavily into development, correcting issues from the first game, building depth where it can, and creating a wonderful setup for things to come. I'm overall beyond pleased with every element of this story, from character to plot, from world to the mythos of Horizon. This game satisfied me in so many ways, and I think it bodes incredibly well for the finale to come in a few years' time. I can't wait to see how this series wraps up, and hopefully Errands learns to grow a proper beard, because my god dude, what is that? Val would be disappointed. Ugh. Ugh. Usually, at the end of these videos, I do a big long speech where I play epic music from the thing that I just talked about, so it invokes big emotions in you and makes you forget everything that I've just said that you might disagree with, so that you can click the like button, subscribe, and watch all of my future videos. This time I decided not to do that. Horizon Forbidden West is a sequel in all of the best ways. It looks at Horizon Zero Dawn and acknowledges what it did. It then takes that and crafts something more from it. This game doesn't try to reinvent itself. It doesn't try to appeal to people who didn't like Zero Dawn. It simply is a sequel to a game that was beloved by many. It stays true to itself in every element of its design philosophy and storytelling, but simply makes it better. Forbidden West enriches its open world design with more things to do, more depth to each of those things, and side quests that rival even the greatest RPGs out there. The main story isn't shy either. They decided they wanted to go big and wild with this entry, and it succeeded in my eyes. It taps into lore only briefly mentioned in Zero Dawn and says, let's make it the focus. We can go down this rabbit hole, and I love it for that. The game is stunning, the animations are second to none, and the general design of levels and environments is intricately thought out. This is a game that focuses heavily on what it means to be Horizon. It takes its own identity and pushes the envelope. This game succeeded in pretty much every aspect that it tried to achieve, and despite its great reviews and high sales numbers, I still feel that its success was overlooked. That's how good this game is. Thanks for watching.
I'm out of leads, but I have to keep searching. This world is your legacy, Elizabeth.
If you knew, why didn't you just tell me?
There will be no version 6.
There won't need to be. I'm saving this one.
True courage means facing those fears with conviction.
A new dream, huh? I hope you make it happen.
I offered them life, and this is how they repaid me.
It's not a piece of Elizabeth. It was like having a strength that was always there.
No! What did you tell her?
That is between me and my sister. There's another battle ahead. It's not about the distant hope of creating a new world. It's about preserving the one we have. When it looks impossible, look deeper. And then fight like you can win.
Originally, I already had all this footage ready to use, but I deleted it all because I'm an idiot. So I'm re-recording it and attempting to recapture the vibes that I had, although I recorded those at 2 AM. This is 2 PM today, so you can see the light coming through. Don't mind the chair. He's fine. This whole video has been an absolute labor of love. I have loved putting this together. I've loved working on it. Being able to work on a video in the way that I have for this one has been really freeing and a new experience, because usually I write a script, I record the script, I edit the video, it's done. But with this one, I wrote 2 scripts. As I was writing the script, things changed. I read it back, I changed things again. I changed things during the editing process, whether that's being adding new things, taking stuff out, rewording things entirely, adding entire new sections to the video, restructuring. Like, it just felt such an organic process, and it was really, really fun to do, although it took a lot longer than these videos normally take. But it felt right to do for a game like Horizon Forbidden West that I absolutely loved. Horizon is a franchise I adore, and this game was just everything I could have hoped for. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, though, about Horizon Forbidden West. I'd love to know what you guys think, get some conversations going, because that's what the comment section is supposed to be used for on YouTube. A lot of people don't use it that way, but it's meant to be used that way, and that's what I'd like to see. People talking about Horizon, sharing their experiences, their opinions, and having a nice old chat. A nice old chat. Don't get angry with one another, alright? Play nice, kids, guys, girls, alright? But with a big video like this, it's obviously so much help to have everyone that's supporting me over on Patreon. I post these videos early on Patreon, as well as other exclusive content over there as well as an entire podcast that me and my friend Tyler do, which is just, it's too difficult to describe. It's so fun though. So check out patreon.com/as-always in the description if you feel like supporting me a little bit further when making stuff like this. But a big thank you to all the producers over there pledging $25 or more. What would I do without you? End it all, honestly. I have been having a ton of fun working on content these days, though. I have a lot of plans, new games coming out, some retro stuff I want to dive into, a little bit more Sonic the Hedgehog, because people did enjoy that Sonic Unleashed video I did, so there you go. And yeah, I think this is sort of just a new era for the... Oh, it just got dark. Let me minimize that. And yeah, I guess this is just sort of a new era for the channel, where I'm doing stuff that I really want to make, putting a lot of work in, but hopefully the end result is going to be something I can be proud of, and something that can actually help grow the channel and take me to new places, because that's really what this is all about. So join me on that journey if you want to tune into future content on, it could be any video, it could be anything, any game, anything I want to do. I'd love to branch out to TV and movies at some point, making videos on lots of different stuff. Feel free to leave in the comments stuff you'd like me to make. I'd appreciate suggestions, but feel free to subscribe. It's free. It's totally free. It is. I don't know why I'm staring like that. If you want to stay up to date on anything I'm doing, videos, connect with me, all that shit. Go ahead, follow me on Twitter and Instagram. My links are in the description. It's where I post everything. You can stay up to date and you can get involved in conversations. I also make funny tweets too. It's funny. It's funny. It's funny. I also stream very frequently over on Twitch. The link to my Twitch is in the description if you want to give me a follow. I've played a bit of Horizon over there. I'm sure I'll do more of that in the future. We talk about Horizon quite frequently. And I've done a bunch of different stuff. Speedrunning Assassin's Creed 1. I did hold the world record until I was overtaken. I'm planning on taking it back. Final Fantasy 14 every single Friday, running through it for the first time. I've been playing through every single Final Fantasy game to get a feel for those. I'm coming up on 7, so if you're a big fan of Final Fantasy 7, like I know a lot of people are, we're coming up on it soon. I've never played it before, so tune into that maybe. And we do plenty of other stuff, just chatting, drinking streams. It's a whole ton of fun. If you want to join me and have a bit of a laugh, follow me on Twitch. I'd appreciate it. And I think that's it. I don't have too much else to say. So, I will catch you all for my next video. I don't know when it will be. I don't know what it will be. But it will be a lot of fun nonetheless. Links are all in the description for everything I've talked about during this video. Podcasts, other videos that I've mentioned, social media, everything. It's all down there. Have a little look in the description. See if you want to check me out in any other place, whether it be podcasts, other videos, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, whatever. Anyway, that's it from me. And I will see you all in the coming days, weeks, months for more content. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you later. Bye-bye.